is here, would like to make a public comment, please go ahead and raise your hand. Doesn't look like we have any guests tonight. Am I correct there?
Frank looks like he's there.
Oh, okay.
We should have Samantha too.
Mildred.
It's a little far for me to read.
We could push it forward a bit.
No, that's okay.
It's okay.
All right, so if there are no special comments or public comments, we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, approval and adoption of the agenda. First, are there any questions, concerns about the agenda?
None from me.
All right.
I'll move we approve as it is.
Second.
And I agree. All right, so,
Excuse me,
yes,
Mildred does have her hand up.
okay,
For public comment.
go ahead, Mildred.
Thank you. I just wanted to state that since Frank and I are on Zoom and kind of closely be able to pay attention to the screen so we'll be able to speak when we're able to, since we're not able to unmute ourselves. You guys hear me?
Said it, can you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry. I just was asking, since we're unable to mute ourselves. I hear an echo. I don't know because my other computer, I'll go turn it off. But just if we could kind of pay attention to the screen, so we're able to speak when we're we raise our hand.
I still didn't hear the end of that. I'm sorry.
I think what she's trying to say is that we monitor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we will do that.
Yeah, we have that up here.
Yeah, I just couldn't see it before. We didn't have it on full screen. So yeah, we'll be able to call on you when we see your hand. Thank you, Mildred. All right, going on to conference item, or going on to item 5 on the agenda, conference item. We're looking at a step advancements for Emily Mayer. Mr. Secretary, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I just, before I get to Emily, who's an amazing candidate, I just want to show this and demonstrate this as a great example of how the PC staff work with the district to create this position. Not only create the position, but recruit for the position. So again, I want it on record that this is an example of that. You'll note that Emily she's a Harvard grad, both undergrad and grad school. She has the large district experience. She comes to us from SFUSD. She understands the intricacies of the district and payroll systems and how they work. So her request is right in line with her experience. She's asked for a step 3. It's not often we get a cum laude graduate of Harvard who wants to take over our business and finance areas. And I'm excited about Emily starting. So yes, I do strongly recommend a step 3 advanced step for Emily. I believe Ms. Mayer might be here. She is, okay. So she is here and she's available if you have any questions, but again, I do recommend the step 3 at range 89. Thank you.
Okay, any questions, comments from the commission?
If Emily is there, I would love to hear what led her to choose BUSD. Not sure which rules were.
Emily, did you hear the question from Vice Chair?
Yes, I did.
Okay, great.
So I think what led me to be really interested was, sorry, there's a little bit of an echo. I'm just gonna. Apologies for that. I think what led me to be really interested in Berkeley Unified School District is that
It's a district of exactly the right size to be able to
dive in
and get your
and
hands
get
around both
your
the
hands around both
operations
the
work,
operations work,
but also the equity
but also
lens of the
the
work.
equity lens
And
of the
so
work.
I've been
And
so
so
excited
I've been
to
so
see
excited
all
to
of the
see
work
all
that
of the
Berkeley's
work
been
that
doing
with
its
its
vulnerable populations
vulnerable
to ensure that they're
populations to
getting
ensure
the
that they're getting the
services and
services and
resources.
resources.
And I really see this
And I really
finance
see this
work as being
finance
able
work
to
as being
enable the
able to
strategic
enable the
direction of the
strategic
district.
direction of the district.
I had the privilege of
I had the
working with
privilege of working with
Dr. Ford
Dr.
Morthell
Ford
when she
Morthell
was
when she was
deputy superintendent at San Francisco. And so I'm really
And so I'm
excited
really
about her
excited
vision,
about her
and
vision, and I
was able to meet
was able to
the
meet the
fiscal services
fiscal
team
services team
under Pauline
under
Pollinsby,
Pollinsby,
and I'm just really excited about
and
the
I'm just really
opportunity to
excited
be
about
able
the
to
opportunity to
take
be able
some
to
of the
take
strategy and
some of the
operations work that I've been learning in
operations
San
work that I've been learning in
Francisco
San Francisco
and apply them in a district
apply
that's
them in
the
a district
size
that's
where I
the
can
size
really
where I can
see
really
all of the aspects of
see
it,
all of
because
the
we end up
aspects
with
of it,
layering
because
and
we end up with
siloing
layering and
in such a way that it's
in such a way that it's
a lot of times you're sort of putting
a
out
lot of
those
times you're
fires
sort
or
of
you're
putting out
not as
those
involved in
fires
all
or
of
you're
the
not as
pieces.
involved in
And so
all
I
of the
think this is a
pieces.
great
So I
chance
think
for
this
me
is
to
a
be able
great
to really
chance
make
for
a
me to be
difference
able
in a
to really
district
make a
that's
difference in a
doing
district
really cool and
that's
innovative
doing
things.
really cool and innovative things.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. Yes, Commissioner Roden.
Well, I'll make a comment. First, welcome, Emily, to our district. We very much look forward to working with you. Just for your info, in addition to my role as a commissioner on the Personnel Commission, I also sit on the Audit Committee for the district, and consequently have worked very closely with Pauline Follinsby for many years, as well as when she was actually Director of Fiscal Services as well, before she became the Assistant Superintendent. So she knows your role intimately, since she's actually occupied it in the past. And I know that your role is going to be absolutely critical to our district. That once upon a time, it was quite a few years ago, our district was in pretty dire financial condition. And as a matter of fact, we were in a condition where we couldn't actually get a clean audit opinion because our records were in such disarray. And thanks to superintendents who came in after that, and I'm talking close to 20 years ago, superintendents who came in after that, and also business office personnel, assistant superintendents, deputy superintendents, we've really cleaned things up enormously. And that's very important. We're all residents of the city of Berkeley and taxpayers in the city of Berkeley. And as you know, we have a parcel tax that's very, very important to the finances of our district. And I'm sure, and it's very important to the voters, that our district be in good financial condition, both fiscally and also in terms of its record keeping and all of that. So again, I think your qualifications are tremendous, and I'm totally supportive of every advancement.
I don't have any other comments except welcome, Emily, welcome to BUSD. And so if we don't have any other questions or concerns, can I get a motion on the step advance?
I'll motion to go ahead with the recommended step advancement and step 3.
Second that.
And I will agree.
All right,
Thank you so much.
congratulations, Emily.
Congratulations, Emily.
Thank you so much. I look forward to getting to work with you all.
All right.
Thank you so much. I look forward to getting to work with you all.
Look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Moving on to item 6 on our agenda, the discussion item. This conversation is gonna be around the classified vacancies. So how would we like to start this off?
Chairman Senator Davis, I wanted to first talk, just to provide some context around, this was a group effort. It involved HR, it involved our team, and specifically Malika, Aaron, Sarah, myself. So what we did is we took our vacancy report that had 164 openings, and we researched each one. There were limitations as to what we could go do. For example, I know there was a request to find out the origins of the position and how long it was been opened and when it was opened. Some of those things were actually difficult for us to find. However, I can report out some statistics on the report that I think can get us started and get the conversation started. Of the 164 openings on the vacancy report, 47 of those positions, which constitutes 29% of the report, are either not a real vacancy or potentially may be eliminated sometime in the future. Future undetermined, but that's what we found out. 65% of all of the positions on the report are in 3 job categories. 29% are in the IA SPED 2s. 23% are in the IT before and after school, and 13% are in the school campus aides. So
Could you repeat those
of course.
percentages again?
So it's 29% are IA SPED 2 vacancies. 23% are IT before and after school, and 13% are school campus aides. So to recap, 29% of the positions potentially may be eliminated. We don't know, but maybe. But they are vacancies that have been vacancies that may not be presented, real vacancies. 65% of the positions are in those 3 categories that I mentioned. So really what we're looking at is almost the entirety, with 65% and 29%, almost the entirety of the report we can speak to. If we bring up the Excel, and I think we will, we actually went as far as providing commentary and definitions and descriptions on those vacancies. So, please, on those vacancies, so we can answer them that way. We were very meticulous for the best answer we came up with for all of those, and I just thought it was important to just put together a framework of what this entails. And again, I can repeat those percentages just for the sake of
The 19%, that was,
29%.
or 20, so 29 was IA SPED 2. 23% was IT before and after school, and what was the next one? I'm sorry.
13%
13.
were school campus aides. And the reason it's not, we were literally number crunching until maybe an hour before the meeting, because we wanted to be as accurate as could be. So really what we're talking about is 117 of those positions. Because if we were to take the 47 that we do not believe are real vacancies, we're left with the 117.
Do you know,
I'm sorry.
through the chair,
Look,
can I ask a question? So you mentioned, Charlie, that 47 as a sort of absolute number were not real or were to be eliminated. And then you had percentages for the other 3 categories. Do you have handy what those percentages, I mean, I could do the arithmetic, but what those percentages translate into actual numbers?
What those numbers are? Yes, I mean, I think Sarah can, she wrote them down somewhere. I don't have them in front of me, but-
So for the IA2 SPED, it's approximately 34 positions.
Okay,
IT before and after school is 27.
okay,
School campus aide, 15.
okay, perfect, thank you.
And if I may, just for context, the overall FTE for classified positions is what?
So, the FTE. That we did not calculate. We do have on the list though, I hope you can all see this. Do we need to blow it up for anyone?
It'd be great then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Even here.
I know I needed to blow it up, but it's okay, I've seen this report. We have in the third column, you'll note the FTE. So we did not combine an FTE total. However, you will notice that in many of our vacancies, especially those that are with,
We're trying to
we have-
stay distant.
this is for the commissioners, and also we're trying to space for purposes of health and COVID.
Right.
Okay,
I'd like to see the.
okay. Here, I can.
What do you want me to do? Should we?
Do you just wanna move it
Straighten
back
it out?
against the
We
wall?
can bring it forward. Here, you know. Maybe we just push it forward.
No, not too far forward, no.
No?
Because now you can't see.
Then I can't.
FTE.
Eric, can you hear us?
I didn't hear you for a while, but now
So
it looks
so
like you're
everything's
back.
coming up on my screen, so everyone's still there. It's just a matter of.
Yeah, it's working now. I didn't hear you for a while though.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Sorry, I unplugged it by mistake. Do we want to fix this screen so we can view?
Sure. What I'm trying to do is share the screen and I don't see any of the,
Oh,
oh, there we go.
there we go. Here we go. Okay. All right. Excuse me. So step on it again.
Yeah. Do that.
The problem is when I maximize the screen here, it was the.
Here too.
People.
Happening there as well.
I know.
Sorry, everybody.
It's okay.
Is there, you share? Can you make that window a reduced size window?
I don't think so. I tried to pull it out on its own and it wouldn't let me do that either.
Can you extend it?
I'm at an awkward angle as well, so.
Sure, can I try?
Yeah, please do. I apologize if this is.
No, don't worry, don't worry.
Can we listen to Frank while we're
Sure.
trying to move them?
Hello, everyone. I just had the same issue that Aaron had, so I lost everybody for like 5 minutes, it felt like. I guess you guys are working on it.
Can you see us now?
Yeah, it looks good
Can you
now,
hear us?
but every time you throw something on the screen, it seems like, at least on my end, I'm having problems connecting. I get a little spinning wheel, unless that's on the computer itself that's sharing the screen. I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Huh. All right, we may have to describe what we're looking at.
Aaron, could you try to share the screen from your end and see if that makes a difference?
I stopped
me-
sharing, so do we want to open up the doc?
Let me try to share the screen.
Open the document? See if it.
In the meantime, if Samantha is there, maybe she can answer our question about overall FTE for classified and the number of individual employees we think we have.
Thank you, Aaron, that works.
Oh, yeah, good. Did that work?
Yeah.
Aaron, did- okay, perfect. Thank you, Aaron. I don't know if Samantha heard.
I don't know if she did either. Samantha, are you there?
Let me text her.
We don't need to unmute her, do we?
I mean, I know these numbers float around, but there should be, you know, in the budget,
Oh, her.
you know, there should be certainly the number of FTE.
Hi, Samantha.
Hello. So I'm sorry, I think I missed the question though, but I am here.
Sure, so the question was for the 23-24 budget, what's the overall FTE allocated to the classified service? Do you have an idea about how many employees or positions actually are represented by that FTE?
I can get both of those pieces of data if you give me about 15 minutes.
Okay, great, thank you, appreciate that.
I believe we did get a total number of current classified employees.
Samantha keeps a spreadsheet that, you know, periodically when there are changes is presented to the board. You know, we're getting rid of an FTE or we're swapping an FTE or something. You know, so I think we have that info and, you know, that's what makes it meaningful for us to understand, you know, out of 164 openings, if it's out of 650 positions.
Mhm.
Right, so
Yeah,
actually,
that's
if we, Aaron, can you go onto the monthly vacancy rate tab at the bottom? That does give us an idea of approximately how many per month, how many total positions there are.
Can we make that bigger?
Can we see that?
Yeah.
All right, so 800,
79.
average of 800 odd positions, I don't know.
So that includes the vacancies.
Mm-hmm. Right, and the vacancy rate, that's a percentage.
Yes.
So we range, can we just take a quick average of that?
Between 18.1.
If you just highlight all the cells, it'll give you the average in one right hand. Choose it to. If you highlight all, well, oh, or you can calculate it, right? See in that little lower right, where we do and shadow there. I mean, just
You
eyeballing
can say
it.
that, it's like 19.5%.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask a quick question, Charlie?
Of course.
For those total positions, or to Sarah, for those total positions, are those independent of funding source? In other words, if you have one position that, 25% of that position is funded by one funding source and 50% by another funding source, and then the last 25% by a third funding source, is that still one position as opposed to three positions?
We're counting that as one position.
One-
So it
so
could
in
be
these
multiple funding
statistics-
sources, but we're counting the position.
And that's just one position?
Correct.
Okay. I also had a question regarding FTE on, so especially things like positions like campus aides. And I didn't see any yet on your spreadsheet, but sometimes those are substantially less than one FTE. In fact, they may only be
Yes,
0.25
yes.
for a campus aide.
Sarah, can we go back to the screen? I think we can pull that up.
Aaron.
Oh, sorry, Aaron. Yes, sorry, Aaron.
There's one that was.
It was 1.2, yeah,
0.27.
0.27,
What is
0.37.
that? Oh, those are campus aides.
Is there, do we know sort of the average FTE for these three job classes?
Oh, no, but we can find out.
I think Mildred has a question.
Thank you. I'm trying to understand this spreadsheet. Are all these positions BCCE positions, or are they included in Local 21 as well? I was referring to the other spreadsheet that when you just had the total number of positions, vacancies, and so forth,
Those are all classified jobs.
including Local
Includes-
21.
Yes.
Thank you.
I would imagine Local 21 would be pretty easy to pick out though, right? Which is like the thing's called supervisor and.
They tend to be a lot less than
Yeah.
BCCE.
So is there a way to, Aaron, are you able to sort this by title so that we can get a quick idea of the average FTE for the three job classes with the most?
I believe it is sorted by title.
All right, so if you went to school campus aid, for example, and you highlighted in the FTE column, just the FTE column. It's sort of interesting, it highlights every other one, but I guess it's capturing everything, it's just showing you what you highlighted.
There's even a 0.5 in there.
But the average, that little blue box, is that little blue box down there showing the total, or can we do the drop down to get the average?
Probably didn't drop zero.
You see where I'm looking, Aaron, at the very bottom of the screen, bottom right, the little blue box?
Oh, there.
Yeah, do the drop down and it'll let you get the average.
It's 0.26.
For school campus aid?
0.26 for school campus.
Okay, and we were looking at 13 of those, right, or 15 of those. And can we do the same for IT before and after school instead?
And just to be clear, Vice Chairperson, I had presented a 13% vacancy.
Right, 15 positions.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right, keeping track of the,
Percentages.
what numbers are we looking at? It's a interesting challenge.
0.43.
I'm sorry, 0.43,
0.43 for the before and after school.
and that was looking at 27 positions, right?
Yes.
IA spend.
.72.
Got it, okay. And again, just so I'm clear, these are all scheduled 54 different ranges. Is that what they are?
They're not all 54. I can check to see.
I'm kind of just trying to understand the hourly for each, you know, the.
Yeah. Let me pull that up. You want the salary ranges for the?
You could just give me the starting.
Okay.
That's enough, right? Because there's 2.5 between each.
Yes.
Right.
Samantha has her hand up. She may have the answer to your question.
So, you guys got the info about the number of positions. In terms of FTE, we have 670.83 positions authorized, and FTE, sorry, 670.83 FTE, and 101.99 vacant FTE. So split between all those positions that you were looking at, that's how much FTE there is.
Those 164 openings equate to 101.99 FTE.
Correct.
Okay, and then for the number of positions, I was sort of eyeballing it, you know, in terms of discrete positions, it's about 840, is that about right?
Um, 849 is what we currently have.
Okay. Okay.
And that includes FTE for our all of our classified, including our anybody with actual FTE. So it's everybody in BCCE, everybody in Local 21, and our unrepresented classified management and our confidentials.
Okay, so this includes.
Which there are 7 confidentials in the whole district.
So Heidi, I did a quick calculation. So based on FTE, it appears that the vacancy rate is about 15%. So it looked like if you did it based on, just eyeballing it, based on positions, it was about 19, maybe 19.5%. And if you base it on FTE, it's about 15%. That's fairly comparable.
Tell me again what you got for positions.
Well, we just eyeballed it.
Right, we said 164.
I think we said,
49.
we said, it looked like it was about 19.5%. Just.
Yeah, I'm sure you're doing the math also.
But on
Right,
FTE, I was actually able to.
And, you know, the FTE measure, you know, on an average wage is, you know, what your, you know, quote unquote savings are to budget. You know, that's one measure. I'm more interested in the positions because, you know, I think that's where we get people who tell us they're working out of class or, you know, stuff that is not getting covered or not getting done. Sam, I guess one other question is for school districts, how do you think our vacancy rates compare to, you know, a peer group?
Compared to other districts in the Bay Area, we are doing either the same or better than most of our neighboring districts in terms of filling classified vacancies. I just attended a conference that was nationwide last week, and every district across the nation is having difficulty filling classified jobs, specifically special ed assistants, bus drivers, food service. It's a problem everywhere, no matter the location.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Yes, please. Samantha, can you address a little bit? Charlie told us that of the 164 openings, 47 would be considered, quote, not real or to be eliminated. Can you kind of address that concept? What does not real or to be eliminated actually mean? How does that translate into the real world?
So some of those are like the positions that we put on hold, the program specialist for after school program when we did the new position for the site coordinators. So we have some of those that are sitting vacant. We have these little tiny .2s at the high school in special ed assistant 2s that are created because we offered 1.0 positions and people wanted to stay at their .8. And so we allowed them to be grandfathered in at .8, but those .2s are sitting there in case that becomes a vacancy so that we can fill it as a 1.0 in the future, but they're not going to be filled as a .2. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the idea is from a budgeting standpoint, you want to be able, if it's during the same budget year and the .8 becomes vacant, I'm just trying to translate what you said into my own words. If the .8 becomes vacant during this budget year, you'll have enough budget to fill a 1.0 FTE.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then some of the other things are structures that are going on. We have a new person in charge of cooking and gardening. Last year, the person who had been in that position left, and we have Farmer Ben is now the person in charge and has been reevaluating the staffing of the cooking and gardening program. We also have some positions on here that were created by sites using either PTA funds or other funds that they shouldn't exist. The funding really isn't there, but there was no paperwork submitted by that administrator to eliminate the position yet. We've been working on that to get those removed.
Yeah. Frank.
Yeah, Samantha just touched on it, and I was going to ask. There's 10 positions or 10 vacancies in the gardening, cooking and gardening. So my question was, why are those positions there? Are they being eliminated? What's going on with those positions? We have a pretty good list. I want to say we have a list of at least 10 people, but they're not being filled, and just want to know if we're eliminating these positions or what's going on.
Do you have any insight on that, Samantha? Are any of those, some of those positions that were funded by the PTA or other sources?
The cooking and gardening program in itself is funded by sources outside of the district, either through the City of Berkeley Soda Pop grant or through other grants. And so those positions fluctuate. I'm not sure. It looks like Charlie and his team may have gotten answers from the program supervisor, but a lot of those positions have been vacant for a pretty long period of time. And they haven't been filled because we haven't needed to fill them to be able to continue our programs as they are. But I have not myself spoken to Farmer Ben about those positions and what his plans are at this point.
So one of the things Charlie just shared with me is, the 2 points of inquiry. One is, what are the 47, not real?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to get into that? Or, the 65%, that are the 3 job classes that are, not surprisingly, are high turnover, high velocity, these are the ones that come up on the radar all the time. And, there are probably, many determinants about why people do or don't take these jobs. So it sounds like one determinant is, is it enough FTE, to encourage someone to come take it? So if the IA speds are averaging 0.72, you know, that's, you know, a healthy chunk, right? Compared to the school campus aides, which are, you know, averaging 0.26. And, you know, just taking it on face value when we're recruiting, it means you're looking at different people, right? You know, who want that. So someone who has, you know, they're the sole breadwinner, you know, they're not taking a 0.26, even if they can combine it maybe with a 0.43 before or after school, you know. And I think you have those insights already, you know, you sort of understand that. The other thing that is useful to understand is the average wage that we're offering. And, you know, we will find out from our class and comp study, you know, if this wage is at midpoint or if we're below or whatever. But just on the face of it, for a school campus aide, just as an example, the salary range is about $20 to $24 an hour. So, you know, a question that I have, you know, as we are recruiting and, you know, trying to spin our wheels here, who's the target population that we go after for a role like that? You know, 0.26 FTE and, you know, fairly low paid.
Well, I mean, I didn't break down those statistics, and I have Aaron on here. But I would imagine students, you know.
Like, well, that's what I'm wondering, like
Parents.
Cal students, right?
You're talking about new aides
School campuses.
who work during the lunch.
They hire.
Those are largely parents.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Aaron just read.
But I think the question was who we recruit, right?
Right.
Did you want to speak to this question?
Yeah, so this is a fairly new position to the classified service. They used to be like what we would call our noon duty directors. And so most of the time, the folks in this position, they're going to be connected already to the school site. So we have parents, we might even have ITs or IAs who are part-time, who take on additional hours. But most of the time, most of them, like the successful recruiting comes from the school community itself, because it's such a low FTE and it's not well paid. So most of our employees that are onboarded, it's because they're already connected to the school community somehow. A principal recruited them or a teacher.
And it's mostly elementary schools that have these positions, right?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
does middle have some?
They're only at elementary.
Yeah, only elementary.
We do volunteers for some of that in the middle school.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's nice. Volunteer jobs. Rough audience. All right.
Commissioner Roder.
So I think I'm looking at it kind of in the same vein that Commissioner Goldstein is, and that is, are there sort of structural things or structural impediments that we could, you know, amplify or eliminate to improve these positions that are difficult to recruit for? So as a case study, I'm wondering, I'm not mistaken, these statistics come through September of this year, well, last month.
Yes.
And during that period of time, as I understand it, and you need to correct me if I'm wrong, the Personnel Commission staff as well as HR has changed the way it hires IA speds.
That's correct.
And IA speds, what constituted, what did we see, 74, I think it was? Of this list. So my question is, so now, as I understand it, we have more of a centralized hiring process, so that we have a continuous recruitment, again, tell me if I'm wrong, continuous recruitment, continuous examination process. And basically, as soon as somebody is on the list, they can now go, rather than to the sites, for the site to choose an IA sped, which, you know, would vary from site to site, I'm sure. Now it's centralized. So my question is, and maybe it's too early to tell, maybe Samantha has an idea, has that centralization process resulted, let's call it an improvement, a speeding up of the hiring process for the IA sped 2s?
Well, what I will give you will be anecdotal, but important, which is, I think, we'll get a really good sense of this, Commissioner Roeder, probably around March or April, when we start to look at the numbers. What I can tell you is that the complaints are still that we're short. The complaints are no longer that they're being moved around to, so that the things that folks are complaining about are just the shortages, where we used to have longer delays, folks would just leave, they didn't get, all of that is, I think, in my estimation, because I haven't received calls, those calls are a lot less. And the feedback I'm getting from the department head, Sean, was that this was a much better process. I know that the way we do it now, Aaron finds out right ahead of time the preference of the person. They want to do elementary or they want to do anything. Then they make it to the list, then Malika makes the offer, then we assign to schools. And it's been, Samantha's here so she can speak to it, but I think it's been working really well, just based on the fact that I'm getting positive feedback from Sean's team and his interim. So Sam, I don't know, you want to add anything to that?
I agree with what you've said. The only thing I would add to that would be that we are hiring all of the applicants that we get, but unfortunately, we still are not getting enough applicants to make a huge dent. And we are still getting people who, we just this last week had somebody who held 2 or 3 positions in the district, a school campus aide and an IT position, and I forget what the other one was, who quit, giving us less than a day's notice. So we're also still getting those situations that are affecting our ability to fill positions and keep them filled.
And again, just to touch on what Vice Chair said, we're still thinking that some of the reasons it's harder to get those has to do with maybe compensation? Or do we know that that's what it has to do with?
I wouldn't say we know.
Okay.
I do know Samantha and I and Sean have kind of tossed around the idea of incentives and things like that, but there's no one answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you look at the range for the ITs and the IA speds, it's 2349 through 2865. It's really not significant, for that amount of training, for the amount of work, for the amount of, so it's a hard to recruit area.
Well, a way to look at that question is, who wants to do that work, which is not full-time work, who might be willing to do it for that wage, or whatever that wage winds up being. Are we looking in the right places? Where else could we look? Right? Since Charlie has come on, we have changed from a demand channel, which is, we'll throw it on EdJoin and see what happens, to actually, trying to recruit, in all kinds of different demographic cuts. And, I am glad to get this information. I'm not at all surprised to see, that these are the big 3. So when I look at something like this, I think, where else should we be looking? Should we be having, I'm making this up, AmeriCorps interns? Should we be, trying to, we set up something like that where, I don't even know how AmeriCorps works. I don't know if they pay better than this or not, but my feeling is it's sort of comparable. Well, it's just, how do we increase the pool?
Well, my apologies if I'm asking you repeat yourself if it's already been asked, but have we seen sort of a profile of who are coming in to this role?
I would
Or is
say,
it just kind of
I
a
would
mixed
say
bag?
no.
Which role are you talking about now, the SPED?
This band,
I mean, I can get that information, but no, I haven't.
just to your point, and we see that, oh, we're getting, folks who, mothers who are trying to, or fathers who are trying to get back into after they, sent the kids, or we're seeing that we're getting college students. I mean, just to get an idea of like, who is this role drawing in?
Yeah.
And then looking at those places where we might be able to find more folks, like that, but,
So SPED is sort of a funny one, and I'm not sure here, what we require necessarily. To be a school campus aide, you just need to be a grown-up,
Right,
responsible,
right.
right? To be a SPED aide, there are a number of certifications you can get, right? Mild to moderate, moderate to severe, up to behavioral intervention specialist, or you can be, a generalist who just, cares about this and, you don't have anything. So the kind of population that would want the school campus aide before or after school, I've been doing dance my whole life. I
Right.
really just love to teach an
Yeah.
after-school dance, is different than, some of the certification requirements that we might have for some of the, do we have any cert requirements for the SPED too?
Yeah, I can tell you what they are. So
Frank,
Okay.
and then, Mildred.
I'm glad to hear that, we got centralized for hiring for the IA position. That's great news. My question would be, do we have data on how many subs do we have in those positions that they're overseeing? Because I think that plays into this. As I've always said, it needs to be centralized because the principals or the people in charge at these sites, they don't want to get rid of their subs that they like so much. And these subs, for whatever reason, don't get on the list or they don't know how, et cetera. So my question is, do you know what the number of subs we have in these positions? And are we, what I was seeing, we get these lists, and sometimes these lists are pretty good lists of IAs. And then there's this long time before it seems like they get contacted to be hired. And the reason my thinking is, or, what I've seen over the years is that they don't know where to put them because the people at the sites in charge of that classified, they don't want to hire them. And we talked about this a lot. But what I'm saying is, do we still have a lot of subs and we're just not filling these positions because the sites don't want to bring in somebody? And I think that's a real concern from the union standpoint. And I would love to see some numbers from the PC on how many subs we currently have and maybe even more data on how much we had in the past and see if that number is getting bigger or smaller.
Do we
That's
have
it for
any
my comment.
on that?
Can I ask Frank to clarify a little bit?
Sure.
Just what he's asking for? So are you saying the number of subs, on any given day in the position, or these are like long-term subs that we use regularly for these positions? I want to make sure I understand when you say subs, what you mean.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so we don't really have long-term subs. So yeah, my question is, how many subs are we have? I mean, the daily basis, and if you want to call them long-term, that we have in these positions. I don't think there's an urgency sometimes to fill these positions. I know there's not an urgency to fill these positions if you have a sub in there that you really like and they're not on the list or they can't be on the list. I know we have a vacancy right now. I brought it up about the cooking and gardening, and I researched it and found out that we've had a list of 10 people since, I believe, May, but we have a vacancy that's being, there's a sub in that position. That makes no sense to me. Why is there a sub in that position? That position needs to be filled off that list. And this has been ongoing forever since I've been in the district, is that we don't fill these positions. We just use the subs and we're happy, and everybody goes home at the end of the day saying, well, we're great, but now our vacancy list, our work as a BCCE is being taken away from us. And I'll stop there because that's a deep hole I could get into.
So just to elaborate a little bit on this, and I don't know if you were able to get more data on this. When we use subs, go ahead.
This is me going down a rabbit hole, but you know, the personnel director, or Charlie in this, he has the right to do a payroll audit, and I don't know if he does a payroll audit, but he should be doing that, and that he could see who's being thrown in these positions, and then he could compare it to a list that we already have, and ask the question, why do we have a sub in that position when we have a list of people who are willing to take that position?
The comment I was gonna make is, you know, to sort of expand on where I think Frank is going. We have different kinds of subs. You know, we have when someone goes out on a leave of absence, right? You know, we have a limited term sub. So if you're on a 3-month leave of absence, I'm that limited term sub. And my limited term is supposed to match to your projected leave of absence, right? We have provisional, right? And we have a third kind that I'm forgetting right now.
Probationary? Oh, you mean for the
For
position?
subs,
Oh, for subs.
right?
Limited term?
Well, I think limited term is the one that always maps to when
Yeah.
someone's on a leave of absence. The others, the limited term may be a little longer. You know, other subs are supposed to have a very prescribed period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, I don't know if a payroll audit alone shows you that, you know, but the question I'd asked of Charlie that I think is harder information to get is, you know, do we have subs who are either in a role, you know, for longer than they should be? That's one question. Or we have subs who, you know, I put them in a role at Emerson, and then I put them in a role at Thousand Oaks, and then I put them in a role, you know, at Ruth Acton, you know, and they spend the whole year doing that rotation. Which I think is a wage and hour exposure. You know, this is one thing that worries me about it.
Yeah.
You know, and the other is, if it's someone who's that good, you know, why
Fun,
would we
we
not?
hire, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the sort of info that I am interested in, you know, because my guess is if you, rather than even doing a payroll audit, I would just look at, on our sub list, it's gonna be the same, pick a number, 25 people, you know, I don't know. You know, and how is that looking is a question.
So how is that looking, and then why, in you know, in the case that Frank is bringing up, if there is a list for that position, then why is that sub still being used and they're not being pulled from that, for that position?
Well, they may not have tested for the position.
No, I'm not saying sub, I'm saying just why.
There's somebody from the list. who
Yeah,
didn't
why isn't
test.
somebody from the list been moved in so that you no longer need a sub there? I think that's the point that Frank is getting to.
And a question about subs is, you know, I know teaching subs get paid, I think by the day or the half day, if we're leaving by, right? You all don't pay them by the hour.
No, it's a day.
It's right, so you
Day
bring
and a
them
half.
on for the day, right?
Like a 4 hour, then the 5th hour.
So for someone who is doing sub work in these classified positions, how are they getting paid? What are they getting paid? You know, and I really don't know the answer to that. I don't know, you know, maybe they're earning $35 an hour, which is so much more than they would ever earn as an employee.
Right.
You know, they don't want to do it as an employee. I don't know the answer.
Well, I will say one thing, and then I guess there's Mildred and now Samantha, but I think one of the purposes of trying to decentralize, or actually decentralizing the IA speds, was to overcome. It was an attempt to address Frank's comment in a limited way, but for the IA speds, so that it wouldn't be up to each site and where the principal may really like their sub, but you've got a list and they don't want to hire off the list, et cetera, the centralization was supposed to, and maybe has, eliminated that problem. That was the goal. So my one question is, when it comes to the manager, the director of special education, who's charged with making those hiring decisions, what happens if that manager or that director talks to a principal and the principal says, well, you know, I'm happy with myself, I don't want to hire this person off the list that you're giving me?
Yeah.
Does the principal still retain that discretion? Or is this new process sufficiently centralized so that it's really up to the manager?
Yeah, so first I'll say you're correct. The intent behind centralizing it was to address the hiding, if you will, of a position or, well, I don't want that person or I don't want this. So it's basically the district as the employer saying, I'm gonna give Tim a contract and then I'm gonna send it to Ruth Hack. That's it, that's what it is. We've all seen at our commission meetings, the principal that comes with the sub, who is the greatest sub in the face of the planet and will not hire off the list. I mean, there's only certain things that we can control, right? With the district being the hiring authority. That said, outside of special ed, I do know that folks on the third floor have, when I brought this to their attention, they have called the principal and said, hey, you gotta hire from the list. So we are getting more support now with this superintendent and her team than we were before. I'm being frank.
No, he's Frank, yeah.
Surely you can.
Right.
I think it's getting better, but I think there's also a reluctance, and this is where the board can help us. I think that there are still some principles, if I'm being really honest about it. I think that the system they have in place just works for them. They're not really terribly interested in what the district or the merit district is supposed to be doing. And that's not every case, of course, but there are those cases that still exist. That said, I have seen, you know, the folks on the third floor that work for the superintendent kind of put pressure on the principals to say, hey, this is the way it's gotta go. But that's not everyone. So it still exists. I think it's better, but it still exists.
Mildred.
Thank you. I would like to continue on, just adding some things to what Frank was discussing, because that's originally what I was going to bring out too, is to discuss the subs. And I know for a fact that there are many long-term subs in positions that are not in those positions because a person is on leave or you know, other situations. They're just in that position because for whatever reason the principal or whomever, you know, wants to keep that sub, and for other reasons why they want to keep that sub, they don't have to pay out, you know, certain benefits and so forth. So that's one thing that we definitely need to look at district wide, is how many long-term subs are in this position, and they shouldn't even really be considered a long-term sub, but they are. And then in addition, for example, what Frank was discussing with the cooking and gardening position, that's a position that I know for a fact that people have, or someone has been interviewed off the list, not as if they're just, you know, they're not on the list, they're on the list, and there's just still no movement on the hiring process. And I recall that when we were discussing these before, we said that we were going to give a certain amount of time that a principal or an administrator can hold on to the list. They're forced to have to make a decision. And then I know according to our merit rules, you have to give them the first 3 people, and they are to, you know, choose off, you know, from the top 3 and so forth, but that's not what's happening. And then again, as I'm looking at this list now, I see that there is an admin 2 position available, but then we have a list for that position as well. So I mean, I guess my concern from the union standpoint is, I think we're holding on to these lists too long, or we're not pushing the administrator or the hiring person to make a decision. And then in addition to you know, the IA positions and the school campus A positions, definitely I think one of the causes is that the income is too low. And so it's hard for us to fill these positions, and it just kind of bothersome because I remember back in the day, everybody wanted to work for Berkeley. So it's concerning for me now that it's hard for us to hire for these positions. But I really want us to look into how long administrators are holding on to the list and why isn't the PC pushing them to make a decision and not just say, I'm going to continue to hold off because there's, this person that I wanted, and hopefully they'll go back out. And then the person that's subbing the position who's not on the list can take the test and then possibly get on the list, and then I can hire them. This is exactly what's going on. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think Charlie just addressed that, but Charlie, do you wanna?
Yeah, no, I just want to clarify, Mildred may not know this, but Erin contacts the principals consistently. I contact the principals consistently. I think if the union really feels this is an issue, they need to take it up with the board. Because the principals don't really feel, and ultimately at the end of the day, any desire or need to listen to me. They just won't. So I think unless the board starts to have consequences for the principals, they're not gonna do it.
And I think just going off of what you were saying earlier and off of what Commissioner Roeder was saying was that when you have the director kind of on board with the centralization, then they're gonna be the ones that are going to be pushing their folks to say, hey, this is the system, you gotta go by the system. In other cases, you're saying it would also be helpful that the board, since they are actually the employers, say, hey, you may have your own system, you may have your own process, but we have this system and this process, and you have to stick to this.
Right.
Because what we're seeing is we have these lists of qualified people, but they're not getting in because you're holding it up. And so again, I think that we're all on the same page here with this, and it seems like it needs to be a collective effort to make sure that when we come up with these lists, whoever is, from the district to the director is saying to their folks, you gotta hire off this list.
And there's a layer there that I think we're missing. I'm not sure who all the principals report to now. Is it Debbie?
Debbie.
Oh,
Okay, that's their boss, right?
In fairness, I mean,
That's the
I'm
layer.
gonna defend Debbie and Samantha. I mean, when I brought it to Samantha's attention or Debbie's attention, they call the principal, because I've been on those calls.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what you have is people coming to the board meeting saying, I don't wanna hire that person. The PC keeps trying to give me somebody I don't want. Ultimately, that's where we are.
Samantha.
I just wanted to follow up and say, I agree that we do have this issue and we are trying to address it. Charlie and Erin and I have worked very hard to make sure that we are addressing this whenever we become aware of these type of situations. And I'm fully in support of, and have been since I got here, looking at our limited term positions and where we have subs and why they're there and how long they're there. Because we have had to make corrections and do things and fix stuff numerous times. So it's something that we're continuing to work on and trying to fix. I would love if privately either Mildred or Frank would contact me about cooking and gardening and at least tell me the location so that I can then figure out who's in these positions that we need to be moving people around.
Thank you, Samantha, sir.
Oh, there's a sub at Washington who's been a sub for 8 more years. Position's never been posted.
Tell us your
Instructional.
name for the record, because we keep.
Tim Donald.
Thank you, Mr.
Instructional assistant, special education. She's been in an unposted position for over 8 years.
Good.
I retired 5 years ago and I subbed there and she's still there.
Thank you for that information, but to respectfully to Frank's earlier point, if I did a payroll audit, that's not gonna catch.
That's not gonna catch that.
No, I
Right.
think you are,
Yeah.
the way I used to trace it, and I remember Erin helping me with this, with some of Samantha's predecessors. it used to be that the employment lists that are reviewed at most board meetings, for a long time, the subs list had no dates, you know. Nothing, it just sort of had the name.
You don't know when they
You know,
got there,
so
you don't know when
the
they're
progress has
leaving.
been sort of incremental, you know, we have dates now, begin dates and end dates. But, you know, what we don't have, and it's painstaking to trace, because I've done this, is, you know, really, there are 25 names that keep showing up, right? And they get assigned and reassigned and reassigned, and there may be good reasons for that, you know, because, you know, it's a big school district, you know, there are always openings. But if we're seeing the same person basically doing the same work in rotation, you know, we need to ask ourselves what's going on, right?
Well, just real quick, and I'm not 100% sure of this, but I suspect that our commission is not completely toothless when it comes to enforcing these rules. Now, we have to make sure we're right on the specific thing. And I think this data, and I commend our executive director, I commend Sarah, I commend Erin for developing this list, because we haven't seen something like this before. I think that as painstaking as it might be, and I'm looking at, you know, in the range of 120, if you don't include those 47, 120 positions, that we need a column for, and I know I asked for this, but a column that has, is it currently filled? Is it currently filled by a substitute? And it'd be a snapshot, you know, it'd be September's numbers or October's numbers, et cetera, just so that we can see, because I think it's really true that each of these different job families are different. We can't just, you know, paint a broad brush and say, you know, they're all the same. There may be reasons for, you know, the continuation in the IA sped position that doesn't exist for or it's a different reason for the cooking and gardening or for the after-school aid. They're not the same, as you pointed out, Heidi. So I do think we need, you know, to add, because I've always assumed this is like our preliminary meeting on this subject, just to see what the scope of the problem is. And I think we've done, or our staff has done a really good job of presenting that. But I think we do need to have that sub information, because then we can start to address Frank's points and Mildred's points. And I think when it comes to figuring out, is it a limited term employee? Is it a provisional employee? Is it come from an agency? Does it comply with the ed code? And I think, again, I'm not sure, but ultimately, if a position doesn't comply with the ed code, there are ramifications to that having to do with payment. You know, according to the ed code, my understanding is unless we, the commission approves a position, you can't issue a payroll warrant for that position.
It's true.
I mean, that's an ultimate, you know, ultimate, but, so.
Well, I mean, this is where our district friends can help us, because the conversation we're having is around subs. It's dispassionate. It's you know, solution oriented. We're trying to find solutions. The reality is that the way this argument is presented most of the time is this is a person who our parents and kids love.
Yes.
And the PC is trying to take them away from us. That's how, so part of the dilemma is the dialogue or the discourse or how it's presented, because that's not at all what our desire is, but that's how it's presented. So that's just yet another obstacle that I think commissioners and board will have to figure out, but that keeps presenting itself.
So in that vein, here's a question, because this was, the bad optics that we saw several meetings ago at, what used to be
Washington.
Sylvia Mendez, right. I think that was the school, where, there was the one where they had the sub who didn't take the test, right? And, they wanted an override, right? So, a different bit of info that I'm hoping we could get, from understanding the sub history there is, our outreach about tests, is more a blast, right? We send announcements to everybody at BUSD, testing this, testing that. I'm starting to wonder if we need to issue very specific invitations to people who seem to be in a sub-rotation for something.
Yeah.
And again, I'm kind of, wage an hour, breathing down my shoulder, making me nervous. I want to be able to demonstrate we've looked for where we think there might be problems. And we have done everything that we can do to take someone who could possibly be a claim at a later time and say, why don't you come take the test, right? And I think we can probably find some of those. We can't find all of them, but especially if it's someone who's been somewhere for 8 years, doing IA work, we ought to be able to find them. Right.
It's funny you mentioned this because I have a real life example to that, which is Oxford. It's very convenient for me. I go to Oxford a lot. But recently I checked with the principal there and she's like, well, I have these 2 folks out there on the list. Gee, I don't know. But my answer to her back later was, here's the posting again in case they missed it. Here is the contact person at my office and they need to apply.
And that is something we can ask principals to do,
Right.
help us solve
Help us
this
solve-
problem.
correct.
Have a sub that you love, tell them to go take the test.
Right. So Beth, the new Beth,
Mhm.
they seem to only hire Beths at Oxford. The new Beth, got on top of it. She's like, okay, now I know, I'll let them know. So those are things we can do. The problem is not knowing what we don't know. I mean, I only seem to find out about these things when they come to a PC meeting saying, well, you won't let me hire my person. So,
Which is why I think how we investigate, who are the frequent subs.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe a payroll audit at least tells you, who's earning $30,000 a year doing sub work. That's a good way to get some names.
Yeah.
Right.
But we do have floaters too. We do have subs that's what they do, they sub.
Right, so their aggregate wages over a period of time should help us understand that they're doing it a lot, which makes them our first, pool of investigation.
Frank,
Things get mixed up.
Yeah, thanks, Roder. You were touching on what I wanted to comment about. And I have a lot to say, so I'll try to spit it out and tell me to shut up if you want to, and I'll move on. Merit Rules 70.400.2 payroll audit, which I touched on before. It does give you, the way I interpret this, it does give the director power. If somebody's in a sub position or in a role and they shouldn't be in that role per the merit rules, then they could basically cut the funding off or the money off to that person. That's the way I read it. So that's your power, Charlie, is you could literally say, we're not paying that position any longer. You didn't go by the merit rules. This isn't the first time maybe, or we told you before not to do this. And you really need to slap their hand and say, no, we have to start doing this correctly. My belief, it's always been my belief that the merit rules is a good system. I don't believe we do it correctly. A coworker of mine, she said, it's a good system if you start from the beginning. But for some reason, the USD wants to start in the middle of the procedures, and it doesn't work. It will never work. You have to start from the beginning when you start with that procedure, and that's when it works, and it would work great, beautifully. But we don't do that. And I'll give a good example. The Washington case. The stuff that was in there, in my opinion, she might be a great person and everything, but he should have never been in there in the first place. There was a list. Somebody off that list should have been offered to be put in that position. And then you proceed with the merit rules from there. And again, I might be talking a little long, but we have a situation here where I work. I'm a maintenance engineer. We have a maintenance engineer lead vacancy, and we have a list of all promotion. I think there's 4 people on that list, me included. And if they brought in a sub to do that lead position, I think you would see a few people up in arms really quick. Like, why would you throw in a sub when you have a list of people wanting to do that work? But we're not even reaching out to that list. We're just throwing in a sub for whatever reason. And that's what I've been saying for a long time is we need to go off the list. This is why we have a merit system, and we're not doing it. And I'll just say it one more time. 70.400.2, I believe, gives the director the power to step in and say, you know what, no mas. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm sorry you don't know, I didn't tell you these things, but I guess I'll tell you now. So I've exercised that rule twice. In one instance, the principal eventually did concede and hire the person against their will. They were very upset with me, but they did it. And in the other case, they didn't. But what I will tell you is I find that these are short-term solutions. They're not long-term solutions. Again, I've done it twice in my time here. Both cases were extreme cases. Both were coordinated with Samantha's office. But it did not create goodwill. And I think, again, I think that what we should be looking at, and I agree with everything Frank is saying, but Frank is trying to convince us. There's no convincing anyone here in this room of any of this. I think the convincing needs to be had at the board level, where there is an effort to have the principals comply with what is essentially a merit district. Some don't. That's the
What would
truth.
you ask the board to do?
There should be, like anything else, a consequence. If I don't enforce the rules as part of my job, there's a consequence. I feel that as a hiring manager representing the district, that when they are given a list, it is part of their job to comply with what is essentially a merit district. That's a fundamental aspect of their job. That's my opinion. If I were, and again, Debbie's been pretty good about this, but you're the principal. Your job is to make sure that the district policies, all of them, including that the merit district is part of that policy, that the spirit of that will be followed.
It seems to me that's something that Debbie owns though. If she is the supervisor for the principals, if I'm the board, I'm gonna hear this and I'm gonna say, well, who's in charge of principals? Who keeps this on their radar? Who, on staff owns this?
Well, like I said, in one instance it worked when I threatened with the funding and that I wasn't gonna give them a sub and take their sub away, they did it. And then the other person went right to the board person.
Should we be talking to Debbie about this?
Debbie, again, what I witnessed is Debbie has been supportive of what we're trying to do.
So there's
It's
support.
bigger than Debbie.
Well, and that's almost why I'm interested in wanting to understand from her perspective how she sees it. There are initiatives and then there are kind of nice to haves, and then there are things where when you bring it up to me, I'll go do it, I'll go keep the dog. And I don't know which this is. It sort of feels like I'll take the dog when you tell me the dog needs kicking, but generally speaking, I'm talking to them about other things. I'm really not talking to them about this.
I will say this though, I say generally in the 2 years I've been here, the principals are much better in this effort than they were when I first started here.
Oh, I think
So, so again, I'm always weary of just deciding policy changes for the 2 or 3 that don't comply. I'm just trying to answer for you what I've observed as
Right.
2 or 3 outliers. But, 15 out of 18 are, okay, I get it. I may not like it, but send me the list and I'll have a conversation.
And what we've heard
And that's the majority.
is, if you love someone so much that you have them subbing, something that we could do differently is, that outreach, that invitation, I'll take the test.
Which I've done.
Right? And, maybe we do that more broadly. by identifying that pool of
We
people.
can, and when, the reason Debbie and I and the principals that, we, once we have that conversation and I understand the principal's position, and it becomes easier to work towards a solution. But in the past, again, ultimately, the board owns that. They're the employer, not us.
Well, and I also think that that's a big stick option too, right? I mean, my thing is I would like us to not have to use the big stick
I don't want to
in
either.
order for the process to be followed the way the process should be followed. So I do hear that, yes, there is a mechanism which allows you to use that big stick. I think that we shouldn't have to use the big stick.
No.
We should have everybody on board to follow the process the way the process is supposed to be followed. And so, and especially if you have a situation where even when you use the big stick, it doesn't work, because then we go over here and say, well, they're forcing me, and whatever happens that this other entity decides, then you have people working against each
Well,
other.
you still need an on-the-ground champion.
Yeah,
If I'm the board, that's the first question I would wanna know. Who owns this on
Yeah.
staff,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're coming to me because this is broken, I understand that. But, if I'm sitting on the board, I'm gonna say, who owns this? Is the problem no one owns it, or is the problem the person who should be the champion is a little lukewarm?
Yeah.
Is that where I wanna make the
Well, and I
change?
also, just to that point, I also think that you can't have folks who shouldn't be kind of going against the process as well. Because if Charlie is saying, hey, I need you to do this, or I'm gonna do this, and then you're running to the board, and then you don't have to do what you're supposed to do because of whatever happened with the board, that seems weird to me, as well, because all of us have an obligation to be making sure that we're following the merit rules in the way that we are supposed to be following. I don't know, not to accuse anyone of anything, I'm just saying, we just wanna make sure everybody is on the same page.
Yeah.
So that so that folks aren't playing one group against the other.
Yeah, and I can tell you, Samantha, Debbie Dean, Superintendent, Jill, there's people on board. I think it's bigger than all that.
Samantha.
So I just wanted to add into this conversation a couple of things. That it's not just coming from our administrators that want us to bend the rules, that we've also had discussions with union leadership about one of the rules and wanting to bend things and do things differently in certain situations. So it's not just administrators in the district or hiring managers in the district who are trying to bend or change rules and not follow the process and the policies. But the other thing I wanted to say is, in terms of the idea of a payroll audit, I think the easier thing to do is that every single PAF personnel action form for any limited term or any substitutes goes through Charlie and Erin's hands. And I would recommend that maybe we create some kind of tracking system for it to be able to keep track of that data of what's going on in terms of those getting approved. They do not get approved by HR. I don't get to sign off on them at all. So I think it would be for us to create a tracking within the PC system to be able to track.
It's a good point.
So,
Well, quick question so Samantha, could we find out, like, again, just a snapshot for September, of the list that you and Charlie and staff have developed that we just saw? Could we add a column to that list for those positions so that we would know in the month of September which of those positions have subs, which have temps, which have agency employees? Is that something that can be done?
It can be done. I just don't know if we have the manpower right now. as I would love to have lent my HR staff to doing more, but I don't have a director right now, and I'm also down in HR tech. So I think it could be done. I just don't know how quick a turnaround we could do it.
And the forms that you were just describing, the personnel action form, that would just be for prospective, for new subs, new temps, new agency employees. It wouldn't be for existing ones.
Well, they would have to have one for this school year to get paid for this school year.
But theoretically, the subs that are in place now already have those forms in place.
Correct, but we have access to all of those forms still. That's in Informed K-12. I can pull up any PAF that's been signed since we went into Informed K-12 in 2021. So I can pull up anybody, like, so that's how we do research on why people are getting paid certain things and what's going on. I actually, in the background here, I've been talking to Malika about making a change because we have some people who are getting extra hours versus actually being a substitute. And the extra hours PAFs are getting marked as substitutes and they shouldn't be. And so we were talking about the fact that we need to make some changes in how we're filling out these forms and how we're training people to fill out forms to make sure that they're filled out correctly so that we can run reports that are easy for us to pull and use.
A question about how we pay subs. If we've got somebody who's already a BUSD employee, and let's say they've got some extra time so they can sub in a different role, different FTE. Do we make it worthwhile for employees to do this, or is the sub pay, like a fixed amount and tends to be less than people's salary? I just don't know how we do it at all.
So
I don't know if it sends people or no.
Yeah, so that's a difficult question. So, because there's multiple to that. If it's just a sub, they get step one of whatever position they're subbing in. If they are a employee who holds a position, then it becomes a question of whether it's out of class pay or it's extra hours. So if it's in their classification, but it's just additional hours, then they get paid the extra hours rate, which is their normal hourly rate that they would get paid for their normal shift. If it's an out of class situation, they would be getting a pay rate that is at least 5% more than what they currently make, but it could be up from that because it matters where they get placed in terms of on that pay scale, in terms of where that 5% puts them.
Do you think, as a general rule, it incents employees to sub or no? The practices.
I think in terms of the people who are simply subbing, I don't think there's a lot of motivation to sub because they don't qualify for benefits and they don't get to move up on the pay scale ever. They only get the benefit of a negotiated raise because all of the rates go up. But for the people who are currently our employees who are helping out by taking over a position and helping out in that position, they're not actually considered subs. They are working out of class or they are doing extra hours. So it is a motivation because they do see extra pay in their paycheck. And if they're doing out of class work, they're generally getting paid more than their normal shift.
Right. I guess what I'm wondering also is, it's a two-parter. If we have a list, we want people to hire from the list, but at the same time, this is an interesting feedback loop. And if the feedback loop is, if there's someone available who already knows BUSD and knows my school or knows my people, I would prefer to use them. And it's a question in my mind, when we talk about people who are serial subs, right? I wonder if these to Samantha's point, are these really people who are just sort of happy coming in at, step one, wherever the thing is, or are these people who are already employees, who are taking additional hours or, whatever? And, an interesting question with that is, if you are an employee who has the time, to actually be able to do this sub work, for this additional FTE, why would you not want to be an employee doing that work?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what to make of that, but,
there's.
First of all, we wanna
We'll
understand
get a
that.
better sense of once we're able to kind of disaggregate that, right? Like the actual subs from the employees who are taking on that
Right.
role.
And of course, if AB 1699 had actually been signed by the governor, then it would have been required that someone who works part-time and wants to get additional hours by working in another available position, that person would have been entitled to that. I think, and probably have priority over the eligibility list.
Right.
But 1699 was not signed,
Right.
so not exactly an issue.
I guess the question is, do employees who sub understand that the potential is there to actually have composite roles? 0.5 FTE doing this job over here, 0.3 FTE doing this other job over here, or do we discourage that?
I think that we're getting really deep into the weeds. I think it's simpler than all of this. Because the times that I have found an obstacle has been because there's been direct contact between the principal and the person. The person then, applies for one of our jobs, passes the background check, and now they're in the school. And now they've been in the school, and everybody loves them in the school, and they don't pass the test. Fundamentally, I think what needs to be adopted in everyone's mindset is how do I as a principal work within this system to get the folks that I want? As opposed to, I'm gonna hire who I'm gonna hire, damn that system, which is, you find less and less, but it exists. I think I can look back and look at all the PAFs and find out subs that I've approved. But I will tell you, Heidi, that when folks ask Aaron and I for a sub, first thing we do is we check to see if they're on the pipeline for a list.
Sure.
So that's what we do, because we know that if they're in the pipeline, even if they don't pass that exam, we know that they at least conceptually have understood that there needs to be an exam to be taken to be an employee, a classified employee.
Well, Charlie, what do you do if you get, because now I'm hearing that you actually do what Samantha was suggesting, which is the PAFs come to you.
They do.
So if a principal, you get those PAFs from the principal?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yes.
So it comes from the principal and it's for a sub. Do you check whether there's an eligibility list for that position?
I do.
And what happens if there is an eligibility list, but the principal has sent in a PAF for a sub?
I immediately talk to Aaron, and then we strategize on how we're gonna have that conversation with the principal.
So the principal is told, you know what, this sub is not appropriate because we have an eligibility list.
Right.
And what, then the principal, some principals comply and they understand, and then you said others, and what do? They go to the board?
It's happened.
I mean, I don't understand that, frankly, I don't think the board has the authority. I think you've got the authority to approve the sub or not approve the sub.
Well, I don't think they know that.
Well, then that's an educational program.
But I think, by and large, even in this case with Sylvia Mendez, if I or my team can talk to the principal, usually we find a solution somewhere, even if the solution isn't immediate. The problem becomes when we're cut out of it completely. So what we've been trying to do and adopt in all of our processes moving forward has been what Frank and Mildred have suggested, which is to engage and just try to get a sense of what the principals want and where they're going. We only get in trouble when we're surprised. We have no idea. But yes, I do approve the first thing I check, So principal will first send the form to Larona and HR, for example, or Paisley, someone. And then they get the request and then they send it to me for final approval. So then I immediately look at the sub, and if they're not on the list, I usually like, well, is this limited term? I'll look at the dates. Oh, this is for 2 months while we're recruiting. Okay, yeah, that's a good reason. But if I see, start date 9/30 with no end date, I deny it, or first actually I've been told not to deny it because it closes it. I request more info. So in the form, you're allowed to type in the question to the principal, which is, how long is this for? You didn't put an end date. So no, Samantha's right. That's one aspect that is under my purview, which has been helpful, but it's not the only solution.
So I'm gonna have Frank ask his question or give his comment, and then we're gonna move on to next steps.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment or a couple comments real quick. There's the way I see it, there's probably two different type of subs. I know there's a lot more for the merit rules, but we have subs that are in vacant positions, and those are the ones that I'm referring to. And then we also have subs who are subbing on a daily basis. In the two positions I know that do it a lot are custodians and IAs. And I know you have one in the room there with you. And the reason why I bring that up is the retirees, they've been in these positions, they've done it, they passed all the tests, and they probably worked in the district 20, 30 years, some of them. So they passed the test. So what I'm getting at is the ones that I see a problem with is that they're bringing in subs and they don't even pass the test. And now they're working with our students. And to be honest with you, I think there's an issue there. It's like, again, you're having people in these positions that clearly need to pass a test for the merit rules to be in these positions, and they're bypassing the whole system, and they're subbing a lot of them for many, many, many years in these positions, and that really shouldn't happen. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Frank. All right, next steps.
Well, I would take recommendations from all of you. I mean, I have my own ideas.
Well, I think definitely, I think it's clear that we want to make sure that we're trying to figure out where those subs are, identify them, definitely separating the actual subs from the employees that are doing, taking on extra hours. That's the immediate thing that comes to mind.
So in other words, basically adding another column.
Adding
to the-
another
to the
column to the,
spreadsheet
right.
about current status.
Yeah.
I might suggest, I was gonna suggest on that point, I have been talking to Sarah about this, and Erin, I think, already does some aspect of this. When principals are new, Erin kind of walks them through our process, so that's being done. What I might suggest in this case now is, I've been meaning to do site visits anyway, and I might start with, tell me about your subs. Because I think that's not as scientific as a report, and I may not find it, but like to your point, they may have been there a long time. Doing 1 day a week, or flying under the radar because they don't hit the 1040, or whatever. Because I think if I start identifying what their needs are, and start encouraging them to take an exam, that might help this a lot. So that's one suggestion.
I think that's a great idea.
Contingent with that, I think is, could Debbie Dean come talk to us just
Sure.
about what, she thinks?
Yeah.
The issues are here?
Sure.
Because you've sort of answered a question, or you haven't fully answered it, but, one question was, how can we really have someone who's a sub for 8 years? How do people fly under the radar? And I think probably a different thing we need to figure out. Our vigilance has been good now. We have dates. We certainly know who maps to, leaves of absence.
Right.
So that next layer is identifying that pool. I almost feel like, what I like about the payroll audit, I don't know what the right dollar amount is, but you know, if somebody's earning on average $25 an hour subbing, you know, in these roles, you know, and they're working 400 hours a year, right? You know, this is a, you know, a career sub, you know, maybe 400 hours isn't the, you know, the right thing. But you could look at it and say, this is somebody who's earning $10,000 plus a year. You know, a quick payroll audit could tell you, you know, what are their earnings to you, you know, just pick a threshold and start investigating those people. You know, so some of it is top down and some of it is bottoms up. I just described the bottoms up, you meeting with the principal is the top down.
Well, can we have the data? In other words, can we have a column added to that spreadsheet that indicates for each of those positions, what's the current status of that position? Is there a sub? Is there a limited term employee? Is there somebody from an agency who's been hired? Because, you know, for me anyway, talking too much in generalities is useful, but I'd like to be able to actually see what we're talking about.
I just
You want
projected
names?
yeah.
I care about the position.
The position,
right.
yeah.
See, but I care about the names too. I guess I want the names.
Remind me your name again.
Tim,
Tim, well, I should know that. Tim.
how you doing, Tim? I've often thought there should be a form letter, dear improperly hired employee. We, the admin and the union want to get you hired properly. But, you know, right now we need to get someone in who's done the proper steps.
That's good feedback. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can design that communication to everyone the way they, part of it is not that's the easier part, is I'm gonna say this. The tricky thing is, how are they gonna receive what I say? So I may have to say it differently to each person.
Well, that could be one of the outcomes, if you really are doing one-on-ones with site admins about what's going on with their subs, that's where you're gonna get that pool, you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
hopefully the buy-in that says, you know, let's have this person stop being a sub, let's invite them to take a test, let's, you know.
And I
Really
bet,
do it
I
right.
bet you lunch at the conference that we would find, if I did the payroll audit, next to that more informal search, I'm gonna find folks on that informal that would not come up in that payroll. I'm almost
Probably.
sure.
I think, right,
I'm
belt and
sure.
suspenders, right, Trevor?
But I also think that if we as the commission supporting our executive director and what he does with the help of HR and with the approval of the union, so we're all on the same page. If we know kind of what the ultimate remedy is gonna be, which in a way is sort of Tim's dear employee letter,
Improperly.
properly hired employee. If that's the sort of ultimate remedy, you know, which basically translates into, and you know what? In a month or 2 months or 3 months, we're not gonna pay you anymore. If that's the ultimate remedy, then maybe we can figure out, okay, how do we change the culture?
Yeah.
How do we educate everybody so that they understand, you know, we don't want to utilize the ultimate remedy.
Right.
What we want is to have this done, you know, in a collegial sort of way, but we're serious about the rules, you know, being followed.
Can I understand one other dimension here, which is a pretty typical corporate dimension or dynamic, and I just wonder if we have it here. Are site administrators responsible for their site budget?
Yes.
Question.
Okay, because, you know, you can also see, you know, the obvious incentive that says, if I can get you as a sub where I don't have benefits overhead, why should I hire you?
No
Right.
problem.
Now, they do present that budget as part, to Pauline, as part of the budget committee that has to be approved by the board. But yes, ultimately, at the high school, it's the principal's job to say, well, I used this money for this, you know, they have to explain themselves. They can't
Right.
just spend willy-nilly, so yeah. the answer is
So, and all kinds of expenses come up for all kinds of things,
Yeah.
and, it would be a pretty typical just corporate dynamic of, I can save a few bucks over here.
Right,
For
right.
what I'm gonna do over here.
Yeah.
And, that dynamic may or may not influence the amount of cooperation that you get. It may or may not be the reason that people use serial subs, but it occurs to me.
Right, Heidi? That would be entirely improper.
Yes.
It would be entirely.
Improper.
Improper.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
no,
I
I
mean-
agree. But I just, I'm trying to think what the
If that's what you're
motivations
doing,
are.
Right.
then you shouldn't be in that position.
Well, shoulda,
Samantha,
coulda, right? But at the same time, I'm listening to the feedback loops. I love you enough that you're a sub for 8 years at my site, but I don't wanna hire you. What's that about?
Right,
Why is that?
right.
Right? So,
Samantha has her hand up.
So I actually wanted to say in response to that in terms of who's in charge of their site budget. It matters on what position we're talking about. So like custodial, that's actually owned by the custodial department. Nutrition services is owned by the services. The special ed assistants are owned by special ed. There are positions that are part of the base allocation out of the general fund. So the positions that most likely we see that type of behavior happening with would be the ones where the PTA is paying for them or some other outside source that the principal is trying to like save that extra money within that budget because they do have complete control over that budget versus the other things that are allocated through the process. So we don't often see it with special ed assistants. We often see it with like a specialist that they hire to teach dance or those type of things. So that's just to clarify that it's very few positions that they actually would see any savings in their budget.
okay. Then I'm back to
One
searching
problem.
for motives and realities.
Right.
Search other places.
Cross that off the list.
All right, so, are we comfortable with what we have, charged Charlie with moving on to in terms of next steps?
Well, could you summarize this?
Yes,
Chairman,
so
you think
what
goes
we're
on?
gonna do is we're going to look at the subs, look at who the subs are, how many of the subs there are. We're gonna also be disaggregating the actual subs from the employees who are taking on, extra hours. We want to then, and we'll do that in various ways, one being kind of this personal kind of, site checks that, Charlie will be doing with the admins. We'll take that information and add it to this spreadsheet so that we can actually have a visualization of where these substitutes are, if they're from agencies, how long they've been there, blah, blah, blah. And then we will, I think the ultimate is to come up with some way of communicating, whether it be through a letter or whether it be through meetings with folks saying, hey, we want to give yourselves an opportunity to actually apply, take the exams and actually be hired into this position. Or we need to figure out, because we need to move that sub out and move in an actual employee into that vacancy. Does that sound about right?
Perfect.
Thank you.
That's three projects. I
Thank you.
can do that. We can do
I couldn't have done that.
You could have done that. All right, so, any other comments on this?
Well, how about just timing?
Oh, good.
What do
Good,
we, I mean, that's a lot on your plate,
Right.
so.
Well, I don't see me doing a report out, but I did want to bring up two things that are gonna be on our plates collectively.
No, I mean timing for when we might expect, this, report.
No, I know.
Oh, that's what you're talking about.
This is going to definitely extend the timing on that. because it's gonna take priority. So we have, an appeal by a former district employee who's been terminated. So I have to start that process. That's all I can say at this point, because I have to. But that we're gonna have to, I looked at the rules today, we're gonna have to set a special meeting for that. It's gonna be possibly, hearing officer, evidentiary, all of these things. So, obviously, because this is someone's employment, I know we're pressed. We have the class and comp, I get that. We have the presentations coming up, I get that, end of the year. At the end of this month, we have to extend our chairman, Senator Davis, and then we have to decide on a chairman for next year, so all of these meetings have to take place before December. So, that said, so
You wanna get back to
again,
us with an
to
idea?
recap, to answer Commissioner Rowe's question, to recap, we have to, we're gonna have a presentation on phases 1, 2, then a presentation on phase 3. We have then, coming up in December, just to stay on EHA, we're gonna have the final phase 4 presentation in December. So those are the EHA meetings. I'm looking at Sarah, she's smiling.
3 and 4 in December.
3 and 4 in December, thank you. So 1 and 2 in November, 3 and 4 in December. Then we have, at the end of this, in our next regular meeting, we have to extend the chairman's, I think he's accepting the next term, and we have to decide who will be chairperson for next year. So that has to happen. So then in November,
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
So as far as Tim's position is concerned, am I right? That's a position that's going to be designated by BCCE, and hopefully they will continue with Mr. Senator Davis
Correct.
on, and then I guess it goes to the board. In other words, we don't have really a role to play in designating that position other than just accepting it.
I think the
once it's
board
done.
approves yours. I don't think they approve.
I think there's a process in the ed code
Yeah.
which should be looked at for accomplishing this. And I think the board has some role in that process. The union designates it, and then the board actually does the appointment. That's my recollection.
For both yours and the union.
Yes, the only difference is that the union doesn't play a part in mine.
Right.
But the union plays a part in Tim's.
And the only one that's yours is
Right, it
theirs
must,
for
right,
yours, yeah.
the neutral sits solely with you all.
Right. So and again, I'm just listing all of the things on the
Right.
docket, right? So we have a really, and then my annual report, which I'm sure you're gonna have questions about. So we have a really busy 3 months. I think that the final report is gonna, to all of you, may even go into January. I don't know at this point, So to answer your question, I probably will pick this up again February or March. But in the meantime, I can start doing these things.
Right.
But I don't realistically see myself reporting this out until after the new year. For those reasons.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
It's,
The appeal meeting is gonna be a process on its own. That's not even, that's gonna be a
we
whole
haven't
separate
even
meeting.
scheduled it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right,
I think we have one more public comment.
Yep. Going on to item 7 on the agenda, public comment. We got 15 minutes for public comment. Anyone want to give a public comment? And I'm not seeing any hands online, so then we will move on to item 8. Our next meeting, which will be our regular meeting on Wednesday, October 25th, 4:30. So please join us. If there is nothing else.
I do have a question. If we know some other special meetings are coming, do we want to talk about a few dates?
I can't talk about any dates right now. It's because I have things coming up, so if we wanna,
We already have these other meetings, so you're okay with the meetings we've already agreed to?
Oh, yeah,
Okay. So I will work within the confines of those. I have to double check.
I don't think we have any other special meetings scheduled, right?
We do.
We just have our regular.
There's one on November 8th.
Yep.
Which I believe you all received an invitation for and accepted. So
Got it. Is that
Is
that our meeting or is that somebody else's?
That's a special meeting to go over phase 2.
This is our special.
Yes.
All right, I had understood it actually to be used to coming to.
It's
Okay.
strictly EHA.
Okay.
That's what it's about. It's just
Right.
a comp study report.
Right.
It's late, I know, but
No, okay, and I had it on my calendar, I just didn't understand it was our meeting, okay?
But there are no other special meetings besides that one at this time.
after that is November 29th and December 13th. I'm gonna talk to legal and Randy about our next steps, but I don't see any hard timelines on when we have to schedule the meeting. I'm gonna try to do it again as soon as possible, but it's realistically probably at this point looking like January.
For the termination,
Correct.
or the appeal.
Well, clearly we just went over that, both the model rules, our rules, and the ed code are pretty specific about all of that.
Yeah, oh yeah, it outlines it. Now it's just a matter of scheduling. I'm sure the rules account for, well, if you've already completely booked, you're gonna have to do, what you can, kind of thing. We'll see.
We should try to be speedy though.
No, of course. So, but I just heard you say that you're kind of booked through December, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm proposing, I'll start.
Well, I'm not booked, it just,
No, I know.
You don't know how to vote,
right,
But that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I do want to expedite it. It is somebody's employment.
Yeah.
And so now what I'm hearing everyone say, I'm gonna do my best to schedule it in January.
Okay.
Between now and then, you should expect me to be engaging you on, what next steps are, and documents and things like
Well, I'm thinking that scheduling might inform whether a hearing officer will be hired to perform it, or whether the hearing will be in front of the commission.
that. I believe that's gonna be under your authority. It'll be your choice.
Right, it is our choice, but it may be, that because of scheduling, we have to go with the hearing officer, and maybe that's preferable.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how is that gonna be determined? I understand it's our choice. You're gonna bring it up at our next meeting?
I hope to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
I hope to put it on the agenda so I can discuss it, and
Great. Thank you.
but I'm gonna
Put
get
it as
advice
an
from
action
council.
item.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I think every step will be an action.
And then, I guess, I think you have to determine whether even these preliminary discussions need to be in executive session or can be done in public, since it's dealing with an individual personnel action.
There's aspects of it that I understand now that are public, and there's other aspects of it that are permitted to be closed. But I'm gonna have all those details
And
from
that's something
Christine.
that Christine
Yeah.
obviously can inform you about.
And just, in terms of like any special meeting, like you can send me dates. And it's just better to send me dates and then I can look and see what's going on and then I can secure that date. Rather than trying to make dates now because things are coming up. Like next week, I'm heading to New Orleans, to a conference, so.
I'll do what I can within the existing agreed meetings.
Yeah.
And I think for big meetings, Sarah and I will start looking at January, potential dates
Okay.
to do something there.
Sounds good.
Chairperson?
Yes.
I know the public comments are done, but could I make one quick
Sure.
acknowledgement? I just wanted to publicly acknowledge Malika Upshur and thank her for her assistance in getting us all, helping with a lot of the data for this report, so.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Malika.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Malika.
Malika.
Thank you for that.
All right, and with that, we are adjourned.
Okay.
Okay.